It's 5 p.m. here in Lagos, Nigeria. I want to welcome our millions of viewers all around the world. I am Kelly Egiga. We're live in the United Kingdom in just a moment. But let's tell you that in northern Gaza, where 91 people have been killed while trying to get food. According to the Hamas-run health ministry, the casualties were taken to Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza City. Hamas is also reporting that Israeli forces shot at the crowd gathered around humanitarian aid lorries. However, the Israeli military claims it only fired warning shots and is not aware of any casualties. In a separate statement, Hamas-run health ministry says 2 people have died of malnutrition in the past day, bringing the number of hunger-related deaths since the start of the war to 159. Let's also tell you that U.S. envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, has now arrived in Israel in a bid to salvage Gaza truce talks and address the humanitarian crisis there. He met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, just as you see on your screen, a moment ago, shortly after U.S. President Donald Trump urged Hamas to surrender and release the hostages on his social media platform. And we're hearing that families of hostages held in Gaza gathered near Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's office in Jerusalem, calling on Mr. Witkoff to push for a release deal during his visit. In direct ceasefire talks between Israel and Palestinian Islamist group Hamas in Doha, we also learning ended in deadlock last week, with both sides trading blame for the gaps lingering over issues including the extent of an Israeli military withdrawal. In the UK, top lawyers are warning that the government recognizing the Palestinian state could breach international law. Prime Minister Keir Starmer recently said UK would move towards that recognition unless Israel agrees to a ceasefire and revives the prospect of a two-state solution. And critics are also arguing that Palestine does not meet the legal requirement for a statehood under international law set out in the Montevideo Convention of 1933. However, Business Minister Gareth Thomas has defended the plan, saying the UK had not signed up to the convention, adding that 147 of the UN's 193 members already formally recognize the Palestinian states. And more reactions are pouring in over the Prime Minister's announcement to recognize the Palestinian state. A freed British-Israeli hostage says Sir Starmer is on the wrong side of history for backing Palestinian statehood. Emily Damery, who was released in January after being held by Hamas for more than 15 months, is warning that the Prime Minister's position risks rewarding terror. Israeli Prime Minister Mr. Netanyahu has also condemned the move, calling the UK's stance a reward for, quote, monstrous terrorism. More stories now. The Palestine Action Group has won a court bid for the right to challenge the UK government's ban on the group under terrorism laws. The Royal High Court ruled that the ban infringed on freedom of expression and that the group should have been consulted before it took effect. The group has been involved in indirect action protests on Israeli defense companies like the RAF Braze Norton. The ban makes membership or calling for support of the groups a criminal offense with punishment of up to 14 years in jail. And protesters marked the decision, describing it as a major step towards overturning an indefensible ban. Security Minister Dan Yavis defended the ban, saying the UK has a zero-tolerance approach to terrorism in any form.
Whatever the outcome is, let's say it is positive and it goes to judicial review. Well, that bounces along to the next stage. I think that's at the Supreme Court. If it is not allowed to go to judicial review, there'll be an appeal. And that will then go to the next stage, though it might be that in his ruling today he says, I'm not allowing an appeal. Who knows?
As we see, the extermination, which is a total annihilation of 2 million Palestinians in Gaza, is in full swing. So it's very critical that we are able to force and put pressure on the British regime. But the British regime instead is continuing to arm Israel.
This is significant because this affects protests within the UK. Can we go out onto the streets and say what we want to say? Are you allowed to use non-violent direct action, which we've used ever since the suffragettes? Are you allowed free speech? At the moment, I would worry about discussing Palestine action in an open way because of the legislation that's in place. All of those things affect everyday people every day.
What's just happened is that the High Court has given permission for the prescription for Yvette Cooper's bill to prescribe Palestine action, has given permission for it to be reviewed, which is fantastic news because it's progress and it means that there's a decent chance that we will overturn this ridiculous and indefensible prescription.
I think what this judgment shows is that there's a serious concern that the prescription of Palestine action was chilling free speech. Again, even though the government tried to claim it would have no effect on freedom of speech, it would have no effect on protest. But the judge himself made a very specific claim that it seems the prescription of Palestine action jeopardizes the British people's right to both freedom of speech and freedom of protest. We're talking about Articles 10 and I believe Article 11 of the Convention on Human Rights. So the judge himself determined that the government's decision was in fact impinging on our rights to freedom of speech. And I think that's something everyone should take very seriously, whether they support Palestine action or not. Because again, this judgment is not solely about Palestine action. It's about the right to protest. It's about the right for the British people to challenge this government's support for genocide.
Well, let's head to one of our headline stories this hour. President Donald Trump has criticized Canada's decision to recognize the Palestinian state, warning it could threaten a trade deal with the United States. Canada announced the move recently, joining the UK and France in supporting Palestinian statehood, a decision that comes amid a deepening hunger crisis in Gaza. And Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney believes that recognizing Palestinian statehood was necessary to preserve hopes of a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, a long-standing Canadian goal that was being eroded, he says. And the U.S. President, Mr. Trump, has given countries until August the 1st, that's a few hours away, to finalize trade deals with Washington or face higher tariffs. And we'll get some perspectives from the UK in just a moment. But let's head on now with other stories. The United Arab Emirates has carried out its 57th aid airdrop in Gaza, marking the 4th straight day of relief operations under its Birds of Goodness initiative. The mission, which is coordinated with Jordan, targeted hard to reach areas inside the Strait. So far, over 3,700 tons of food and relief supplies have been delivered using nearly 200 specialized aircraft. On the ground, 58 Emirati aid trucks have also entered Gaza, while work continues on a water pipeline project to improve living conditions, according to local media. The UAE says the aid is part of Operation Gallant Night, a wider humanitarian effort to support Palestinians. And away from Gaza, a German pro-Palestine activist, Yasemin Akar, has been cleared of charges in Germany and is now speaking out against Israel. Ms. Akar took to her Instagram page saying, quote, "We are radical and we fight the roots of evil Israel." She also accused Germany of targeting her and has vowed to continue until justice prevails. Ms. Akar was found not guilty on 9 counts related to her activism, including her role in the June 2025 Freedom Flotilla that attempted to break the Gaza blockade to bring humanitarian aid. Supporters rallied outside Berlin's Tiergarten Court, chanting slogans and waving pro-Palestine banners with photos of malnourished children, citing the hunger crisis in Gaza.
Germany's a Nazi state. Germany's a Nazi state. 1, 2, 3, 4. Palestine Arabia. Palestine Arabia. Stop the genocide. Stop the genocide. Stop the genocide.
The German state is not pleased by it, even though I did the very same things in many different movements and many different causes. But they're not pleased to see me do this in Palestine. But I will continue. That is a promise. But I stand here because I believe in justice. Whether it comes from here or from the streets, justice will prevail at the end of the day.
Well, I want to bring in now former ambassador and permanent representative to the United Nations office and other multilateral agencies in Geneva, Ambassador Joseph Ayalogu. He joins us from London. Ambassador, great to see you again at this time. First of all, Ambassador, I wonder what possible impacts will the recognition of Palestine as a state by these three countries, the UK, France, and now Canada, have on the ongoing war in Gaza?
Yes, good evening. Thank you for having me. Well, let me say it might appear now to be largely symbolistic, but it's also an important one because the issue of a two-state resolution has been hanging for quite some time, and if these recognitions will send a message to the rest of the global community, then that will make sense. I would assume it would be the beginning of sending that message, because when you consider that there doesn't seem to be really any way to put an end to the decades-long quarrel that we would all, most of us would agree that a two-state solution is definitely the only solution.
Ambassador Joseph, I mean, I know the focus is on a two-state solution. That is something the U.S. and even Germany is happy on. We hear that Germany's Foreign Minister, Johann Wedefeld, says if negotiations for a two-state process do not begin, then Germany may be forced to reconsider acknowledging the state of Palestine. Now, this might not end the war, but what leverage would it give Hamas in the war with the Israeli Defense Forces? That's the IDF.
Well, you know, Hamas is seen as a terrorist organization, and, well, it's all in a name. The point that it's the military arm of fighting the state, the Palestinian state, in this situation, I mean, in this long-drawn war. It may not necessarily give Hamas a leverage, but it will set a pace for the political and diplomatic energy required to begin to kickstart the issue of a two-state solution.
Ambassador Joseph, and I imagine that this is perhaps the bane of Israeli Prime Minister Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu's campaign in Gaza, in the sense that he feels a two-state solution will be legitimizing rather the Hamas militant and group. What do you think?
Well, that is his opinion, but we know that there is no a one-state solution cannot be a solution. And he has not provided any the attempt by each of the groups to exclude the other hasn't helped. We know that Hamas would want the end of Israel, which is not possible. Neither would Israel want the end of Palestine, which would also not possible. So the bottom line is that a two-state solution would have to be negotiated. There is definitely, we already have an acknowledged state of Israel. We also have a state of Palestine that has not fully developed because it hasn't agreed, because of the tensions. It hasn't been possible to agree on defined boundaries, which is one of the requirements of statehood. But it's got about 147 acknowledgements or recognitions in the UN. Now we are also seeing about 4 members of the Security Council that is recognizing Palestine. So the important thing is to work towards a negotiated settlement instead of this attempt by the winner takes all or survival of the fittest. It hasn't helped us up to this point.
So, so Ambassador Joseph, so how do you imagine the existence of the Palestinian states? What and where would they possibly occupy, and how would the state structures be established?
Well, first of all, Palestine was there in modern times, the formation of the State of Israel by the Balfour Declaration of 1917, and of course by the establishment of the Israeli state from 1958. There has to be give and take, whatever it is. Now, I'm not, we can't, but negotiation. There are areas that can be stated equivocally as Israeli, and there is also states, areas, territories that are Palestinians. At somewhere close to where it was, what it was before the 1967 war. You know, the boundaries around that time. Give or take.
Ambassador, we will explore other aspects, especially as regarding international law and diplomacy. But we are back to the rifts between the U.S. and Canada over this. The U.S. President, Mr. Donald Trump, is threatening to impose a 35% tariff on all Canadian goods not covered by the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement. This, we understand, is supposed to take effect on August 1, and we're a few hours away from August 1. I wonder perhaps if you think this is another excuse to argue with Canada over tariffs, and what do you consider the benefits of perhaps becoming a part of U.S. states?
Well, I think it was a little bit presumptuous or preposterous when it was suggested, and it still remains so. Canada is an established sovereign country, a neighbor to the United States. The current trend of trade wars, which incidentally President Trump started, and you know, it has been with Canada, with the EU, with China, with almost everybody. It isn't getting us anywhere in terms of global trade. Well, obviously, Canada would not allow itself to be bullied. I've made that point quite some since, and the U.S. knows that. So I would just think that some sense will come between the two nations, and they will resolve their trade issues with regard to mutual interest and benefits.
Let's consider other areas, Ambassador, because some senior lawyers in the UK are warning that the government recognizing a Palestinian state could breach international law. The critics, they argue that Palestine does not meet the legal requirements for statehood under international law, which is set out in the Montevideo Convention of 1933. What do you say?
Well, that's neither here nor there. The only condition they haven't met is agreement on delineating boundaries, territories. That has been the challenge, and we know why that has been so, because of the intransigent on the part of Israel to help with that agreement, help in deciding what should be the boundary. And it is because of the failure to determine a boundary. That's why most countries, at least about 147 countries of the UN, who are pushing for having a two-state solution, want that matter to be resolved by discussion, by negotiations. Definitely, the situation where the Palestinians or Hamas pushing Palestinian interests will go and cause the damage or the mayhem that happened in October is definitely condemnable. But the same thing with also the killing that's been going on since then, to the point of you lost the lives of over 60,000 people lost. That doesn't sit well with global morality and global responsibility. So we are talking about a solution that is workable. The one-state solution is not workable. That is very clear. A two-state solution is the only something that is close to workable. Of course, it will have to be negotiated. That's also another key point.
Ambassador, I mean, speaking of negotiations, which you have mentioned, the direct ceasefire talks between Israel and Hamas ended in a deadlock again in Doha last week. Both sides, we understand, are trading blames. So I imagine, and I'm wondering just how will perhaps both sides come to sit at a table and possibly have a ceasefire. Are you optimistic?
Well, anything is quite possible. I would think that the U.S. government, President Trump, will need to put a little bit more pressure on Israel, on Netanyahu, to begin to think seriously of coming to the table. Of course, obviously, whenever anybody suggests to Israel to ease down on, the tension and all that, the person, tendency is that the Israeli government, Netanyahu's government, would consider the government, whoever sees that as an enemy. But one thing is definitely clear: there has to be a solution to this crisis, and it has to be amicable, and it has to anchor on a two-state solution that defines the territory that we can call Israel and the territory that is called Palestine. Thereafter, any infringement would, of course, we would then decide who is the aggressor. But for now, it's a little bit difficult to find a solution. But definitely, there is no way we can think of. It's not possible to think of any other option than the two-state solution. That is the most peaceful that is on the table for now, even if it's taking time to come to actualize.
Ambassador, allow me to squeeze in perhaps two more questions before I let you go. Speaking of pressure on Israel and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, we understand U.S. envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, is in Israel. He has met with the Prime Minister just a moment ago. But I also know that President Donald Trump, some hours ago, also is urging Hamas to, quote, surrender and release the hostages who, of course, are in captivity. So pressure on one side on perhaps Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and we see Donald Trump on his social media platform, Truth Social, urging Hamas to release the hostages and surrender. So I wonder perhaps what you read of this, the U.S. Special Envoy right there in Israel. Are you even optimistic at all to say that perhaps Mr. Trump will prevail?
Well, probably Mr. Trump is beginning to see a way to do what needs to be done. That is put pressure on both sides. It's definitely uncomfortable that the Hamas have not released all the hostages. Some of them have died. By now, it's quite disappointing. But maybe they want to use it as stick in the negotiation, but that doesn't really make sense at this point in time because they've actually lost so many people, over 60,000 people, and it doesn't. They ought to. Hamas should give this a chance, release the hostages, and let the world then see what happens. Yeah, I think that's what's a fair thing to expect.
Any benefits or possible consequences for these three nations who have been perhaps tagged as very bold nations to go against Donald Trump at this time, the UK, France, and Canada?
Well, probably benefits, maybe not. Penalties, possibly. Trump likes to punish people who are not in his favor. But definitely these countries want to assert their right to take their own sovereign decisions over an issue that's been going on and in line with their value system. Of course, you can understand that the British seem to have a sharper sense of responsibility in this matter. It was their foreign minister in 1917 that started off, created a space for Israel, and worked up to the 1948 setting up of Israel. They seem to feel a sense of responsibility, moral at least, to ensure that in creating a space for Israel, they did not allow the decimation of Palestine, because Palestine was there. In fact, Palestine was under the trusteeship of Britain for quite some time. And beside that, of course, there is the issue of the humanitarian considerations that's driving so many more recent efforts or decisions or driving an attempt to take firm decisions over this particular matter at this time. Perhaps before then, it wasn't there. Before the difficulties that they are facing in Gaza, the huge humanitarian difficulties, maybe these countries would not have taken these steps, but obviously they are. Israel has not helped the matter, has not helped them. I would think that Trump would see the actions of these countries and perhaps many more to come up in line with this development, that it is about time that a solution was found with regard to the Israeli-Palestinian crisis.
And conditions...
yeah, to understand these countries. Yeah.
Ambassador Joseph, conditions remain dire in Gaza. We understand since the war began, we're experiencing almost 157 number of deaths related to starvation and malnutrition. But it's a fine place to anchor our conversation with you, former ambassador and permanent representative to the United Nations office and other multilateral agencies in Geneva, Ambassador Joseph Ayalogu. Thank you indeed for talking to us. Welcome back to our millions of viewers here in Nigeria and all around the world. This is The World Today. I am Kelly Egiga here in Lagos. It's the second part of the program, and we continue with our coverage of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Ukrainian officials say at least 6 people have been killed in a wave of Russian airstrikes on Kyiv. Now, more than 50 others were injured after drones and missiles struck multiple districts in the capital, bringing down an apartment block and damaging many locations. Kyiv's military administration says the death toll may rise as rescue operations continue. Residents report hearing the high-pitched buzz of drones for hours, followed by loud explosions as missiles hit their target. The attack comes despite warnings from U.S. President Mr. Donald Trump that tougher sanctions could be imposed on Moscow if a ceasefire is not reached by August the 8th. In the meantime, the EU is warning Ukraine about a new bill it passed in Parliament. The bloc says it will require decisive steps to combat corruption following concerns about the anti-corruption bill. Spokesperson for the EU says the Union is still reviewing the final text, but welcomes the return of safeguards for Ukrainian anti-corruption agencies.
Concerns or
the EU has clearly raised strong concerns about the adoption of the amendments to the Criminal Procedure Code in Ukraine last week. Since then, we have been in close contact with the Ukrainian authorities to remedy the situation. So our messages all along have been really clear. Ukraine must build on this solid foundation as a future EU member state and must preserve the independent anti-corruption bodies, which are the cornerstones of Ukraine's rule of law. When it comes to today's vote, which has taken place just a few minutes ago in the Rada, so the Rada has restored key safeguards ensuring the independence of the anti-corruption bodies. In our view, the new law addresses the key challenges of NABU and SAPO's independence. We will, however, need to check the final text as it has just been adopted. Let me, however, underline that this is not the end of the process. Ukraine accession will require continuous efforts to guarantee a strong capacity to combat corruption and to respect rule of law. We expect Ukraine to deliver on those commitments swiftly and take decisive steps on rule of law. We continue to follow the situation closely, and we remain available to support Ukraine in this process. As regards the latest developments, we've made our position really clear. I can confirm there are no such plans as freezing EU funds. What matters for now is that Ukraine has anti-corruption bodies which are independent, and that Ukraine puts in place the reforms needed to respect the rule of law. Well, I think this is the past. What matters for now is that we have the safeguards, as we said, and we'll continue to work with Ukraine.
To health matters now, where officials in Mexico are battling a ricochet outbreak that has killed at least 40 people and infected over 180 others nationwide. Veterinarians have been removing ticks from dogs in Juarez City as authorities there intensify fumigation and awareness campaigns. The disease is caused by bacteria transmitted through bites from ticks, fleas or lice. Symptoms include high fever, rashes, nausea and muscle pain. Health officials are also urging families to check pets, clear yards of debris and perform daily body checks, especially on children. Infections have been confirmed in at least 14 states in Mexico, including Sonora, Sinaloa and Chihuahua. In the U.S., President Donald Trump has unveiled a plan to digitize healthcare records. Speaking at a health tech event in Washington, D.C., Mr. Trump says the new system would give patients easy access to the records and help move America away from clipboards and fax machines. He says the plan would boost efficiency, profitability, and overall health outcomes. On a lighter note, the president joked that he was uninterested in seeing his own records. He was recently diagnosed with a vein condition called chronic venous insufficiency, but officials in the White House say it's a common and non-serious infection. The president continues to take aspirin as part of a standard preventive regimen.
With today's announcement, we take a major step to bring healthcare into the digital age, something that is absolutely vital. You got to do it. Moving from clipboards and fax machines into a new era of convenience, profitability, and speed, and frankly, better health for people. Under the leadership of Administrator Oz, we're officially launching the CMS Digital Health Tech ecosystem to give healthcare providers, insurers, and software companies the tools they need to empower Americans with a 21st century experience on health. The key breakthrough we've made is getting many of the biggest names in the healthcare and technology to agree to industry-wide standards for electronic medical records. The new standards will also make it simple for patients to access their own personal health records. I don't want to see mine, please. I don't want to see. I don't know about you. They have all sorts of things, sir. They can tell you exactly what your problem is going to be in 6 years. We can do it.
The money that's sent from Washington doesn't get to rural America. About 7% of Medicaid dollars get to rural hospitals. We now have an ability to infuse funds through this $50 billion Rural Health Transformation Fund into that system. The gathering today is another example of how we can actually jumpstart that and accelerate it. The other reality is COVID broke the system. It did for many reasons. Medicaid expenses went up 50% in 5 years. Medicare, the trust fund that we met at actually Treasury with Secretary Besson and Secretary Kennedy as trustees, it goes bankrupt in 2033, and that is actually a conservative estimate. It could go bankrupt as early as 2029. Thankfully, due to the economy, that's not going to happen. But we don't want to have to take that risk, and there's some fundamental changes we need to make accordingly. Now, there's one other big reality about making the system more efficient, which is why what everyone here is talking about is so critical. And let's just pick an average American born in 1964. That average American born in 64 will retire this year at age 61. If just that one group of people born in 64 could work 3 years longer because they're healthy, because they feel like they want to do it, because they feel vital and vigorous and they're flourishing, just that 1 year working longer is $1 trillion to the U.S. GDP, and is $300 billion of tax revenue to pay for a lot of the problems that people are concerned about. So it's not just keeping people out of the hospital, getting them to thrive and flourish that makes what we're doing so critical today.
And back here in Nigeria, patients and other people seeking health care services in public health facilities across the country continue to groan as the 7-day warning strike by nurses and midwives enters day 2. A visit by Channels TV to some of the public health institutions across states shows compliance by the nurses as they stayed away from their duty posts. The national chairman of the National Association of Nurses and Midwives, Federal Health Institutions Sector, Maraki Orilwan, while speaking this morning on a program, Sunrise Daily, insists that the union will not suspend its ongoing strike until key aspects of the demands are addressed. Some of those demands of the nurses include the upward review of shift allowance, a uniform allowance adjustment, a separate salary structure for nurses, increased core duty allowance, mass employment of nurses, and the establishment of a nursing department in the Federal Ministry of Health, among others.
The Ministry of Labour invited the leadership on Monday or Tuesday, which was the last day of that ultimatum, but the meeting ended in deadlock because those that are supposed to be on ground during the meeting were not there. Especially the mother ministry, Federal Ministry of Health, the minister was not there. head of service of the Federation was not there. So the meeting ended in deadlock. And as at yesterday too, the coordinating minister of health invited the leadership. They met, and the meeting is still inconclusive. So the meeting probably is going to continue either today or Friday.
What's going on at those meetings? Is it that you bring forth these things that you're asking for, and then they say we can't meet these demands? Is that what's going on? Or are they saying shelve the strike, let's see what we can do one after the other? What happens that leads to the deadlock?
Yes, at least I think that is what the government will definitely ask for, that we should suspend the strike so that they can look at our demands. And that one, we are not comfortable with that. We have to make sure that part of the demands are attended to before we can suspend strike at all.
Let's bring you more stories now. 139 Nigerians have been received by the National Emergency Management Agency who were repatriated from Agadez in Niger Republic. The agency revealed this on its official X handle, stating that it is part of its efforts to ensure the safe and dignified return of Nigerian migrants. The returnees comprise of 22 male and 52 female adults, as well as 33 male and 32 female children. Nigeria's northern borders with Niger Republic have remained notoriously porous over the years, making cross-border movement both frequent and largely unregulated. The Nigerians in Diaspora Commission has condemned what it calls a blanket outrage against Nigerians living in Ghana who have been branded as criminals, reacting to a viral video by some Ghanaians calling on authorities to send Nigerians back to their country. NIDCOM boss Abike Dabrerewa says Nigerians are not criminals, but are good ambassadors wherever they find themselves. Some Ghanaians in the viral video alleged that the behavior and attitudes of Nigerians do not conform to the norms of Ghana and they should be sent home. The NIDCOM chairman is now appealing for calm, urging Nigerians living in Ghana not to be provoked or resort to violence, assuring that the issue is being handled at the diplomatic level by the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Bianca Ojukwu. And staying with updates from NIDCOM, stranded Nigerians in the Central African Republic have arrived at the Nigerian embassy in Banjul. These are Nigerian miners who had earlier called for help after being abandoned by their agents without receiving remuneration for work done for 11 months. They have now received immediate intervention from officials of the Nigerian embassy and car security who accompanied them from their location to the capital. In the meantime, the Nigerian agents who lured them into the job scam is said to have been identified and is expected to be prosecuted. Welcome back to the program, everyone. We're winding down now on the program. A Delta Airlines flight from Salt Lake City to Amsterdam was hit by serious turbulence, sending 25 passengers to hospitals and forcing the flight to divert to Minneapolis St. Paul International Airport. The airline says the Airbus, which can seat over 250 people, landed around 7:45 p.m. on Wednesday. The airport fire department and paramedics met the flight as the 25 passengers were taken to hospitals for evaluation and treatment. One passenger said people who weren't wearing seat belts were thrown about the cabin, hitting the ceiling and then falling to the ground. Serious injuries from in-flight turbulence are rare, but scientists say that they may be becoming more common as climate change alters the jet stream. A man was killed when a Singapore Airlines flight hit severe turbulence on May 2024, the first person to die from turbulence on a major airline in several decades. An auction house, Sotheby's, has returned a set of sacred jewels believed to be linked to the Buddha's remains to India after facing mounting pressure from the Indian government and global Buddhist leaders. The Piprawa gems, described by archaeologists as one of the most astonishing finds of the modern era, were due to be auctioned in Hong Kong in May. However, the sale was called off following diplomatic intervention and threats of legal action from Delhi. Sotheby's said the Mumbai-based conglomerate Godrej Industries Group has now acquired the jewels. The auction house added that it was delighted to facilitate the return following 2 months of negotiations involving the owner, the new buyer, and the Indian government. And finally on the program, a martial artist in China has slashed his way into the world record books by cutting through 10 watermelons in just over 9 seconds. Fan Shisan from Zhengdu used a 77-centimeter martial arts sword to accomplish the feat. The watermelons were spaced more than a meter apart. Mr. Fan also holds a record for slicing through pieces of A4 paper with a sword. He said the biggest challenge is maintaining precision while using a flexible blade. The attempt was sanctioned by Guinness World Records and showcases a unique blend of traditional skill and modern stunt performance. What a way to slice your way into the books of the Guinness World Record holders. And finally on the program, everyone, on a programming note, starting August 1, Channels TV is expanding our news bulletin lineup with 3 additional broadcasts to keep you informed throughout the day. At 1 p.m., the midday update brings you the latest headlines and breaking news to get through the afternoon. At 4 p.m., the afternoon briefing offers an in-depth look at current affairs and expert analysis. At 5 p.m., News at 5 provides an update on the day's most important stories with updates and special guests. All these will come your way ahead of our flagship news at 10. But you don't have to miss a beat. You have to tune into Channels TV starting August 1. That's tomorrow for more comprehensive news coverage all day long. And we here at Channels TV are looking forward to this new chapter. August 1, it's a big day for us here, and we hope you can join us. That does it for us here on the program. On behalf of the production team and everyone here, I'm Kelly Egiga. Thank you for watching. We're going to stick around here on Channels TV. Sports news is next with Barong. You're absolutely in great hands. Good evening.